In progress.
পরে পরে
হ্যালো হ্যালো
রান করতে পারেন, আমার তো কোথাও ভাবে ঢুকছে না।
আমাদেরকে হোস্ট করেন, ভিয়া পোস্ট করেন।
আমি কথা বলে সবার সাথে কথা
সবাইকে মিউট করে দেন।
হ্যালো
কিন্তু মাত্র দুইটা
শুধু 500 জন না?
Okay, can we wait for a few minutes? I think some of the members are still yet to join. I can hear you.
Yep, we can wait for a few minutes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Ken, I think we can start now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. We're just resuming on now. So I have a few questions saved here from the previous chat, and I will go through a few of these as they come up. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to answer them now because they're a bit further in the further in the session. But where we stopped off just before was how I closed and then reopened a Caseware file, and that was through the File Open screen under Computer. I browse to the folder where I opened the file. Okay. One question here that I want to address: is there a limitation on the size of the audit work paper? From the software perspective, there is no size limit. Not from the software perspective. It comes from your hard drive. So if your hard drive has only 500 gigabytes, then it can only store 500 gigabytes worth of Caseware files. That's the only limitation there. But from the software perspective, you can store as much as you want inside this file. Please bear in mind that you should only store one file in one single Caseware file here, because there is no limitation to how many files you can use as well. If you're a really good auditor and you have 2 staff members working on 20,000 audit files at the same time, you are more than welcome to have 20,000 Caseware files, so long as your computer can handle it, and so long as your computer can handle the storage, and you can finish up all 20,000 audits. You just have 20,000 single Caseware files, okay? Please do not share multiple files in here. There is no limit to how many files you can have inside of Caseware. Okay, so another question here is, how do we find this digital dashboard? Just very quickly addressing that. You have different tabs down here at the bottom. So if you click on the digital dashboard, that will take you back to the digital dashboard. And then if I have the document manager open, I can click on this tab. If my document manager is not open, I click on the document screen to open the tab. And every time you open a tab, it appears down at the bottom here. Okay. You can also click on the home button that you see at the top here to return to the digital dashboard. So that's just very quickly. Okay. Now we're going to pause here for a moment and look behind the scenes. I'm going to take you behind the scenes and show you how Caseware is working. So first of all, I'm going to open up my web browser, my Explorer browser. I'm going to quickly go into my data folder, and this is ABC Motor Company A, the file that I created today. I'm going to open this folder, and this is the Caseware file. So looking at this file, I'm going to select all, Control A, select all, and down at the bottom here, I just want to point out, there are 184 items inside a Caseware file. As you add more information, this number will continue to grow. As you add more documents, as you add more data, this will keep growing and growing and growing and growing. Okay. Once again, there is no limit to how much you can add in here. It's just the storage space that uses up on your computer. So with this, I want to point out that a Caseware file, unlike your Word or Excel document where it's just one file, Caseware files are actually made up of a number of different components. This is really important because what happens if I selected a number of these documents, right-click and delete? Then your file will not work. Just like your engine in the car, which is made up of lots of different parts and different components, if I stuck my hand into the engine of a car, pulled out a bunch of stuff and threw it away, your car engine is no longer going to work. The same idea here with a Caseware file. It needs all 184 pieces here together to work properly. Some pieces may be more important than others, but we still need all of these pieces for it to work. So be very careful. Do not come into the folder here and delete any of these parts and pieces, okay? So this is a single Caseware file. You'll notice that there is nothing else in here. One of the main rules of a Caseware file is that it must sit in an empty folder of their own. Okay. I have Tuskin says he has 181 items. That's fine, Tuskin. Different files have different sizes. As you work through it, you will get more and more. It will start accumulating. I just have 3 more items. It's not a big deal. The number of items is not a big deal. You just need to understand it's a lot of different pieces in here. Okay. So let's minimize this, and I'm going to go back to the ICAB training folder. In here, ABC Motor Company B, this is also a Caseware file, but this Caseware file is only one single file. Okay, how did we get here? Now, I'm going to open up Caseware working papers again, and this time I'm going to open up that Motor Company B file. I'm going to go to computer. I'm going to browse to my desktop, ICAB training, ABC Motor Company B. I'm going to now double click and open that file here. So it says expanding. Once it finishes expanding, under the ICAB training folder, ABC Motor Company B, now there are 125 items in here. So we can save everything into one single document or one single file, but when you are actually using a Caseware file, it expands out and blows up. I bring this up because it's really important. Each Caseware file must live within an empty folder, because if I kept that on my desktop is now going to be a mess with 125 pieces of this Caseware file all over my desktop. If I left this in a different folder with lots of other documents, it's going to mix in with all those other documents. So if you're taking notes at home, a big important point that you should be writing now is each Caseware file needs its own empty folder. Okay, that's why when you look at my data folder, you can see even though each and every one of these is their own folder, their own file, it first sits within a folder, then the file sits inside there because there's so many little pieces of that. Okay, now ABC Motor Company B. Let's come back to the Caseware file here. This is ABC Motor Company B. Okay, this is the play file that I provided you. Under File, if I go Save Compressed, I say include BAK folders, include subfolders, include everything. File Save Compressed, then I say yes, and it compresses. What that does is it's going to take all 124 pieces that we see in here and compress it into one single file. So I'm just showing you that. Yep. Okay. So with this, a very good question Kibria has just asked. Once it has been compressed into a single file, you can then take this and transfer it from one PC to another or send it to somebody else. This is how you can share a Caseware file. If a reviewer, an external reviewer, a regulator comes to you and say, hey, Ken, I would like to review ABC Motor Company. I save compress this. I don't send this file. I send the whole folder. I zip this whole folder up. Okay. And then I can say, here, this is the whole file that you can now review. This is how you would share or even move the file around. And that is through the File Save Compress feature. So under File, if it's open, it will have Save Compress. If it's not opened, you will not see the Save Compress option. So this menu that you see here will show you different options depending on the situation. It's smart enough to know you have the ability to compress something or not. Okay. Another question, do the reviewer, if I'm sending this to the reviewer, yes, your reviewer will need to have Caseware to be able to review the Caseware file. Don't worry, at the end of the training, I will show you how to export all of this to PDF. If the reviewer doesn't have Caseview or Caseware, they can review a PDF copy of your Caseware file. You can export it out to PDF. Okay, so that's how you open and close Caseware file through the file open and file save compress feature. Now, once it's save compress, if I want to open it, it's the same way. I browse to the folder where it is sitting, and I open the Caseware file as I normally do. When you open it as you normally do, it will then expand it for you. Okay. So back inside my Caseware file here now, I'm now going to start the audit. Quickly check if we have any other questions. Nope. Okay. We're now ready to start the audit. So first thing, another question that came in, when we work, do we have to save? Inside of Caseware working papers, you don't have to save because there is no save button. Everything is saved for you immediately. I will point out during the next 3 days, in certain areas, you need to save your work, but inside here at the moment, there is no save. It's already done for you. Okay. Another one that's very, very popular at the moment, I've seen 2 or 3 questions pop up. How do multiple people share that file? Now, this file is sitting on my C drive. Okay. For those of you who only have 1 license, there is no sharing because you only have 1 computer that can run Caseware. For those of you who have multiple licenses, you all have Caseware Smart Sync and Caseware Cloud. I will be in the Smart Sync and Cloud session on the 4th day. I will be taking you through that whole process of sharing the file so that multiple people can review and access the file at the same time. Okay. For those of you with just 1 license, unfortunately, because you only have 1 license, there is no sharing. You will have to pass the computer to the next person to open and access this file. Okay, so let's come back into my dashboard. So the dashboard is really important. I click this home button here to go into the dashboard. Anytime I finish a section and I say, what do I do next? What's my next step? The dashboard is the best place to look because it will tell you what is next. So first of all, we haven't done any of this yet. We need to set up our engagement file. So I'm going to come into my engagement properties here, and we're going to fill in some information. Okay, so you have different tabs. Yep. The first tab is name and address. So we need to fill in the name and address tab of this client. Now, if you're taking notes at home, there are 2 or 3 required fields. Everything else is optional, but there are 2 or 3 required fields. First of all is the operating name. So the client company's name. This is ABC Motor Company A. Okay. Then we also need to have the address. Those are the 2 required fields inside of your audit engagement. So I'm going to call this 123 Fake Street. I'm going to fill in the state. I'm in Langor, city. Oops, wrong section here. I'm going to fill in and the country. So it's important to set this up because in your Caseware file, we will be generating reports that you can send to your client. So if you want to, you're going to have the name and the address of your client. By filling this in here, you don't have to fill it out in other documents. It will automatically pick up the information in here and put it into your letters and reports for you, that when you send it off to your client, whether it's a PDF or Word document or actually printed out into a letter, it will have that address and that name. So this is why it's important to have that information. Everything else is optional, but you can still fill them out. Okay, I'm not going to waste too much time filling out the rest. We're now going to move over to the next tab, contact 1 and contact 2. So here, you can also fill in the contact information of your client. The idea here is that Caseware files can transfer from 1 year to another. Yeah, all of this will roll forward. Okay. By filling this out, I don't have to do it next year, but also when the new team member joins, they don't have to knock on my door and say, hey, for ABC Motor Company, who is the contact? They can come straight into Caseware under the engagement properties. By clicking on the engagement properties, complete engagement properties button here, it will bring up the engagement properties screen, and I can look for contact one and say, that's who I need to contact. Okay, you have a new staff member come in, they say, where do I find it? You can teach them this, and then every engagement going forward, they don't have to ask you for it. Next year, I don't have to fill it in either, because this will roll forward, this will carry forward to next year and the year after and the year after until you decide to change it or delete it. Okay, then we come into, you have two contacts that you can fill out. Then you can fill in the reporting date. Now, the reporting date is really important because it tells Caseware when are we reporting. Is this the 2019 audit, 2018 audit, 2020 audit, 2021 audit? Okay, so the year-end date is the one that we need to worry about. I don't have to worry about the year begin date. You just fill in the year-end date. So what is the year-end date of this audit engagement? 30th of September, 2021. So I drop down this, and then I pick September, 30 September, 2021. Okay, the date format that you are seeing on my screen follows my Windows setup. Then, for today's purposes, I'm going to say this is a yearly audit. Now, for those of you who do half-yearly audits, quarterly reviews, I will be releasing videos on how to work on those and how to set those up. For today, we're only going to focus on just a yearly audit. And then we're going to leave period balances alone. So you fill in name and address, contact details, and reporting dates. Then we click OK. Okay. Another question here is, if the contact change, what do I do? If the contact changes, you can always come back into the engagement property screen, and you can then change the contact information there. Okay, so just click on this complete engagement properties, and this will open up the screen for you to change it. You can come back at any time to change all that information. Okay, so we completed engagement properties. That's done. What's next? We move down to the next item, complete optimizer checklist. So when you first create a file, these two screens are automatically shown to you. Remember at the very beginning when I first created the file, those two screens were the first two things I looked at because those are the required information first. Okay, then complete optimizer checklist. Click on this. While that is loading, another question here, can more than one member? Yes, you can. If you have more than one license, it can work on multiple computers. We will cover that on day 4 in Smart Sync and Cloud. Okay, so please, at this moment, we're only thinking of a single user. Day 4, we'll talk about multiple users. Okay, 400-2, optimizer checklist. This document was also open when I first created the file about half an hour ago. Okay, this optimizer checklist is really important because we need to answer the questions in here to start customizing our file. So there are 15 questions. Actually, there will be more or less questions depending on the answers in here, and I'll prove that. I'll show you that. So we're going to go through in here and answer some of these questions first. Now, what happens when I answer these questions a certain way? The entity structure is a company. If you say yes, can you see the blue? Let me zoom in. Can you see the blue text in here? These are what we call guidances. If you answer yes, then form 200-101 will be included and 200-102 will be deleted. So if you say no, then we will delete 101 and keep 102. Okay, what do those documents mean? If I want to see them, I can go into my document manager. Okay, I can look around for 200, I believe. Yep, so 200-101 and 200-102 are audit procedures for corporate or partnership. So depending on your answer, Caseware will keep one and delete the other. So that question that we have previously, oh, there are double ups of certain documents. Yes, by answering the optimizer now, we will remove the unnecessary documents. Okay, so answer here, I'm going to say yes, this is a company. Do we have any special purpose framework? If we say no, then specific procedures, specific items inside 405305 will be deleted. Once again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You can review this on your own time. You can use the test file that I gave you, or you can create your own test file and go through this in detail. But I'm going to start answering these questions now, and then I'll show you what will be deleted. Okay, condensed audit forms are appropriate. I'm going to say no because I want to show you the full set of work papers. So I'm going to say no here. There is a continuance of an audit engagement. So is this a first-year audit or is this a second-year audit? So I'm going to say this is a, I'm going to say no here because this is a first-year audit. I'm going to say no to auditor's expert. Yes, I'll keep the risk report. And do we have any standard business cycles? I'll say yes to all of this. So we have all the full forms available. Okay, I will say yes to sampling. And I will also say yes to analytical documents. I'll say yes to most of these documents so that we keep that. There are transactions between component entities or related parties. So I've gone through, I said, yeah, there's none of that. So I don't have, I can say no. And by saying no, in your work programs, any testing for related party transactions will be removed from the file. Okay. The business conducts in another currency. I will say no here. So we don't have to do any testing for foreign exchange. I will say yes to inventory count. So we have our inventory work papers. Do we have any extensive estimates? Let's say no. And do we want to use the reporting optimizer? I'm going to say no for now because that's a bit more advanced. Then we have finished all 15 questions. Okay, moving on. At the end of this, I can close this document and that will tell you to save. So inside of a case view document, this is a case view document. This is different. This is different from the Caseware screen. See how they are two separate screens here, okay? This is your document reader. So when I can close this case view document, you will be prompted to save the document. So this is where you need to save. Inside of Caseware working papers, there is no saving. Inside of a case view document, there is the ability to save, and it will prompt you. It's like your Word or Excel. When you exit, it says, do you want to save? That will be where you can save the work. So here, I can choose to save, or when I'm ready, once I have answered all of those documents, you don't have to answer them all at one time. If I only know a few answers, I can close it and come back later to answer the others. But now that I have answered all 15 questions, I can click on the AOCR button at the bottom here. The AOCR button is just a quick shortcut. All it does is close this document and open the AOCR document here, the Optimizer Confirmation Report. Okay. So this is a shortcut. I don't have to close and save, then open the other one. This one does it all for me. So it closes and then it loads the AOCR document. Notice it's generating information based on the responses that I have said. So in question 1, because I answered yes, it's going to delete this document. Based on question 3, by answering no, Caseware says you can delete all of this document. Based on question 14, no, delete all of this. Question 15, no, delete all of this. These are the physical documents it will now remove from my file. You can review this and you can decide to change if you say, no, actually, I want to keep the reporting checklist, or actually, no, I want to keep some of these documents because I may want to use it. You can untick it and exclude it from the deletion. So if I don't tick this and then now say proceed with deletion, everything that has a tick will be deleted. Anything that's empty will not be deleted. Okay, I'm going to tick it all, and then I'm going to proceed with deletion. There you have this warning. These selected documents will be deleted from the client file. Documents can be proposed for reinsertion by changing the optimizer, or you can manually add it yourself through our library. So that's the question there. What if the information changed? You can add it back yourself or change the answer in the optimizer, and Caseware will suggest what needs to be re-added by coming into the AOCR again. Okay, there is no undo. You have to recreate if you make errors. So I click OK, and those documents are now deleted. There is also a record in here that said KC deleted on this date. Remember, at the very beginning when I first created the file and I told you there was a section where you had to enter your name and your initials? That name and initials is what shows up in here when you perform an action. So I filled it in many years ago and told Caseware, my name is Ken Chan, my initials is KC. So now whatever I do inside of Caseware, Caseware will say, oh, KC did this. So that when a reviewer comes in and say, wait, who deleted the documents? KC was the one who deleted it because that's the person that logged into this computer. Okay, I'm just gonna pause here for a moment. I need to save a few questions. I'm going to save a few questions and then come back to them later. Okay, so if I haven't answered your question yet, please don't worry. We will revisit them at the very latest at the end of this or end of this session. I might have some one-on-ones with those of you who are getting errors, but please bear with me and I'll answer your questions later on. Okay. Okay, so moving on now. So we have set up the file. I can now save. And I'm not, sorry, that went a bit too quickly. Let's redo that again. I have finished deleting the file. Okay, those documents are removed from my file. Now, to exit out of a case view document, I mentioned there was a save button. You can click the close and it will tell you to save, or you can click the home button here, this little house, we call it the home button. You can click the home button and it will save and close the document for you through one single click. So if you don't want to save, you click the X button at the top and it says, do you want to save? You can say no. I don't see why you would do that. Or through that, you just click the home button and save the document. Okay. Going to pause here for a moment. And if anyone has questions, if you have a really long question, please feel free to send a chat that say, please unmute me. I can unmute you and you can send in any questions that you have related to what we've just seen. There are a few questions coming in that are stuff that we will look at in the future. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to hold those questions until we reach those topics. So I'll pause here for a few minutes.
And I think if anyone have any questions, they can raise the hand so we can take the questions from them.
Yeah.
Sir, please, আপনাদের কারো কোনো up to the session কোনো questions থাকলে ওনার কাছে একটু raise করা যাবে.
Okay. There's a question here about tags. We will talk about tags about day 2 or day 3. So I don't want to bring those up now because it's going to be very confusing talking about stuff that's not related. Golam, you have a question for us?
Yeah, Ken, I think Mr. Golam Fozul Kabir, he has a question. So
I was trying to ask that, can we set this up in different devices and use only one at a time?
You can. So at the very beginning of this session, we talked about transferring license to the revoke license. you have to manually do it yourself by revoking the license, which means removing the license from this computer and then using that same license code on your second device or on your third device. But it is a manual process that you have to move the license from one to another.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. So someone wanted to see the delete part again. So under the AOCR button, and under the AOCR document, at the very bottom of the AOCR document, there is a delete button. There should be a delete button in here. It's not showing anymore because I have already clicked the button. So once you tick the documents you want to delete, you simply click the delete button again. Taskin. Or alternatively, you can go back to the recording later and watch that part again. Okay. So Kazi, once again, we are going to talk about different multiple users on day 4 in SmartSync because the majority of people here only have one license. So the integration of multiple users will happen on day 4. And deleting a file. So when you're ready to delete a file, you can go to the folder where that file is. So if I don't want this file anymore, actually one of them here, so Kevin Corp, this file, I don't want it. I can right click and then just delete the whole folder and that would be removed from my computer. Okay. You can restore files, but it's going to be very, very tricky. It's highly recommended that when you perform a deletion, you are absolutely sure that you want to delete it. You can, but not a guarantee that files can be restored after deletion. Because as I've shown you, there are lots of different parts. So depending on your computer settings, it may wipe some of those parts. If it wipes those parts, there is no recovery. If there is any recovery, it will have to come from your recycle bin. That's out of Caseware's control. If your recycle bin has a certain set size and gets rid of these parts, then yeah, you will lose the file. Okay, so be very, very careful with deletion. Srejan, about the business cycles, once again, that's something that we will look at day 2 and day 3. So I saw your question. I will park it for later. Okay.
Is there any questions or can we proceed further? আপনাদের স্যার কারো কোনো প্রশ্ন না থাকলে আমরা আগাতে পারি।
So if your device crashes and your license was lost, you can always email us. So you can email myself or Afseen, and we will be able to help you with that. Okay. Minimum PC requirement, we can send that out later on, but most of you should already have the minimum PC requirement should be in an email, in the license email that I sent you. Okay. You can work on multiple audits at the same time. Yes, I have many audits in my file. You can see in my data folder, I have all of these files. I can open all of them at the same time if I want to. Simply by clicking on right click and then go in Caseware working papers, right click Caseware working papers, you can see I now have 3 copies of Caseware working papers. I can open 3 different files on my computer at the same time.
I think we can proceed now. I think one has questions still now, so we can proceed. Okay. There is another
Okay.
question from Sajidul Alam.
If we delete data from C drive, it will no. If we delete the data from C drive, it will not remain in Caseware anymore because it's gone from your computer. And yes, we recommend saving in C drive. It is possible to save in other drives. I will show you that a bit later. The demo version, let's talk about that a bit later, okay? This is where when at the moment for we're talking about the training. No, you don't, Neural, you don't have to close the project. You can open all of them at the same time. Okay, so moving on now, I'm going to come back into the digital dashboard. Okay. So we finished the first two buttons here. I'm now going to move to the next section, which is to import the trial balance. So here I have few options. Okay, I can import from Excel, or I can import from accounting software. Now, if you choose to import from the accounting software, we have a number of different accounting packages that you can work from. So I think we have 80 different accounting packages that you can work with. Okay, if your client uses one of these accounting packages, you can then choose that. So if you say your client using QuickBooks, you can come into QuickBooks, and then you can look at the version number. So if your client uses QuickBooks Online, great, we can use that. Now, if your client says, oh, I use QuickBooks US 2020, you see that there is no such version here for 2020 US. So this is not an option. If your client uses any other accounting package that does not appear in this list, then you cannot use this option. Okay, it must appear in this list, and it must have the correct version as well. If they use any other version, if they use any other software that isn't in this list, it is not supported. So if it appears as from the import from list and as the version, you can then follow the instructions in here and fill it out. Now, depending on the software and depending on the version, you'll notice that the options in here change. We don't have time to go through all of them. What I can suggest you do is click the help button, because the help button, depending on what you click on, it will take you to the appropriate section. So this here we have Sage SAP, because I was in Sage SAP and I click help. The help took me straight to instructions on how to use the Sage SAP import. Okay, if I jump now down to say QuickBooks, and then I click the help button, then Caseware will open the link on how to import from QuickBooks. So it will see the option you have selected, and then it will take you to the help site. And within that help site, it will tell you what do you need and how to import, step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3, all the way down. Explain all the different options. If you choose budget data, this is going to include budget data in your import. Give you all the information, click OK. Okay, so that's all I have to talk about regarding importing from accounting software. Most of the time, you're going to find that they don't use an accounting software that is supported. What you can do then is say, please send me the Excel file. So they can then export the information into Excel, and then we can import directly from Excel. Okay. So to import from Excel, I'm going to click on the Import from Excel button. And we're going to use an Excel file that has been provided to us. So before I go in there, I'm going to take us out to my desktop. Under ICAB training folder, I have a trial balances folder, and you can see we have two Excel documents here, a preliminary and a final. So I actually have two sets of trial balances, one for 10 months and then one for full 12 months. Preliminary is for me to do the planning audit. And then when I'm ready, I can import the final audit balances. Okay, and have two sets of the CB. Okay. So first of all, under the components to import, I need to choose chart of accounts and general ledger balances. Okay. Under the Excel file to import, I'm going to browse to that Excel document. So from here, I'm going to go to my desktop under ICAB training, trial balances. I'm going to import the preliminary account. Now, the Excel document, someone here has asked, Hafiju, are there any Excel templates for organizing the financial data? You don't need a template. You can export in any format from the software that you have, and Caseware will handle that for you. So in this process, I'm going to show you how we can handle all the different formats of the data that you give Caseware. Okay, you don't need to follow a specific format. Okay. So I choose the file that we have. I select the worksheet where the trial balance is stored in. It's in my first worksheet, worksheet number 1. And the period date sequence is yearly. This is my yearly balance. I know it's only 10 months, but ultimately I will be doing a yearly audit. So I'm going to tell Caseware this is the yearly balance for now. Then we click next. Okay, so here Caseware is reading the Excel data. So in the Excel file, I will open it up very, very quickly. In the Excel file, it has been set up in this way. I did not manually go and set this up, by the way. I used the client's software, accounting software. I just say export it out. I don't care how you export it out, just export it out for me. So in that software, it exported out as account number, description, and then balances, current year debit, current year credit, current year balance, which is a combination of both, and then prior year 1 and prior year 2, 2020 and 2019. Okay, so that's all it's given me. It's given me other information that I don't need for now, but that's fine. We don't care how you export it out. We can deal with the format. So here, I need to tell Caseware where the balance sheet starts and where the balance sheet ends. We only need the balance sheet data. So the balance sheet starts on 101. So this line here, account number, is not part of the balance sheet. It's just a description. So I'm going to tick that. And by ticking it, it would remove the line. So check the box to exclude it from import. I'm telling Caseware, don't import this line. Okay? This line we want to import because this is the start of the trial balance. I'm going to review everything as well. I'm going to make sure there are no empty lines in between my trial balance. And then there is a total line here. That's not part of the trial balance either. It's just a total line to make sure everything is zeroed out. Okay, so I'm also going to tell Caseware, don't import the total line. Then I click next. Okay, so here we now have to tell Caseware what each of these columns represent. By telling Caseware the information in that column, it will know what to do with that column. So the first column is my account number. Really, really, really important. You cannot import a trial balance without account numbers. If you don't have account numbers, you need to set up account numbers for those accounts. Account numbers are how Caseware identify your accounts. Okay, so it's also really important that account numbers stay the same each year. So if this year petty cash is 101, from today all the way to the end of time, Caseware will know for this file, 101 is petty cash. Next year, if you change petty cash to say 201, then you need to tell Caseware that, which is the mapping exercise we're going to do next. So the mapping exercise is really tedious. It's really long. So the idea is that if you have to map your account every year, that's not going to be efficient. Okay, your mapping will roll forward every year. So you only have to do the tedious, the bad bit one time in the first year, and you want to keep that as long as possible. By keeping the account number the same, you don't have to redo that tedious work again. So here I tell Caseware, this is my account number. Okay, this column is the name of the account. So I click on where it says ignore. I go to account details, account description. Okay, then I scroll further across. I can ignore all of this balance sheet data, all these weird information. We don't know what that means yet. So I'm going to tell Caseware, ignore it. We don't want any of those. Then we're going to come into the final part of my file here, which is all the financial data. Now, I have actually split this up so you can see it nicely, but Caseware can handle both ways of importing your data. Some accounting packages will split the debit and credit amount into two different columns. And some of them will combine into one column. I have given you both examples in here. If it's split, then you use the first two columns. If it's combined, it would look like the first column. So you can see 165,000 debit, no credit amount, therefore $165,000 is the balance. Okay? If your accounting package splits them up into debit and credit, then I choose the ignore button here. I tell Caseware this is my balance. This is my current year balance. And because it is yearly, if you're taking notes at home, for yearly balances, you must use opening balance. So if you're taking notes, please write this down. For yearly balances, it is opening balance. I can say this a million times, and I do this in every training. Within 2 weeks, I will guarantee you someone's going to choose period one. Okay, I see this in every training. I can stress this a million times. Someone will choose period one. Please, please, please write it down. If it is a yearly balance, choose opening balance. Do not use period one. We will talk about the period options in the future, but today it's an opening balance. It's yearly. It has to be opening balance. Okay, so this is my opening balance for this year, for 2021. Now I come down here and you have other information. So Caseware is asking you, is this your debit and credit field? That's not true because this is debit only. All the credit fields are on this line here. So I tell Caseware, this is the debit line or debit column. Okay. Then I go to the next line, the next column, and I go to balances and I go current year. This is still my current year balance. This is once again still my opening balance. Now, this is not debit and credit either. This is the credit field. Okay, so I tell Caseware, this is my debit field, this is my credit field. When Caseware imports it, it's going to combine and import them together for you. That is because the software that my client uses splits them up into two different columns. I don't have to go and manually do this myself. Now, what if the client software combines them two into one single column? Then it shows up like this. At which point I do the same thing. Account details, balances, current year balance, opening balance. Here, Caseware will know anything that's a positive is a debit amount. Anything that's a negative is a credit amount. It will import them according to what you have put in here. Okay, so the whole point to someone's question there, is there a template? Do we have to follow a template? You don't have to, because we have built-in tools to cater for all the different scenarios. You just need to tell Caseware which scenario we are dealing with, and Caseware will import accordingly for you. Okay. There's a question here. What is period 1? Period 1 is not for first year. Please do not, if you're using a yearly trial balance, do not use period 1. It should never be used at all. Okay. When it comes to period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I will share a different video on when it's used for. It's used for half yearly and quarterly. If it's yearly, you only use opening balance. Please do not, if you ever see an option and it's only just period 1, it should never be used. Okay. Okay, so that was my first year. That's my current year balance. What happens to the first prior year? First prior year here, I go to balances, prior year 1 balance, opening balance again. Okay, and this time it's all combined into one column, so it's debit and credit. If it's split into 2 different columns, you can also choose the same options to split it up if you want to. Same thing then, this is my third year. This is my 2019 balance. So it's going to be prior year 2 balance. And once again, it is the opening balance once more. Okay. I have a question here, Muhammad Katabur. You said sometimes it does have a debit or credit. If that's the case, within the accounting software, there should be an option to remove that. We only need the figures. It cannot have any numbers, it cannot have any alphabets in the balances. So please work with your client to see if there's a way to exclude the DR or CR characters from the balance. Okay, if it's in a different column, you can just ignore that column. But if it's in the same cell of the balance, there should be a feature in the accounting package to remove DR or CR. If there are any, if you struggle with that, Mohammed, please reach out to myself and we can try and organize a call, or support will be able to help you with that. Okay, so I have totally defined my balances for Caseware already. This is the, in real life, this is the end of your, this whole step. But for training, I've actually set up something else in here. So I'm just going to quickly also come into this column, 1.1.2.80. I'm going to also map this column. In real life, you're not going to get this column. Okay, you don't have this column in real life. This is just a training thing that I have set up to save us some time. So here, I'm going to go to grouping, and I'm going to choose mapping number on the left-hand side. Not mapping number flip, mapping number on the left-hand side. So this I will explain a bit later, but you will not have it in your real life example. This is a training only thing. Okay, so once we have fully assigned all the balances, I go next. In here, there are 3 options we need to look at first. Okay, every set of accounts that you import, you need to look at this option here. At the moment, we are importing all accounts. Sometimes you have really old accounts that hasn't been used in 3 to 4 years or 5 years or 10 years, but they still appear in your client's list of accounts. They just have 0 balances. So that kind of takes up way too much space. You know, if they have 50 accounts like that, you have to deal with 50 0 balance accounts. Caseware has built in a feature that will exclude. So it says here, import accounts with non-zero total balance, which means only import accounts with a balance. If it's 0, do not import it. So I'm going to do that because I want to only import accounts that are in use. And because I'm importing 3 years worth of data, I need Caseware to read current year, prior year 1, and prior year 2. If you don't tick prior year 1 and prior year 2, Caseware will only read the current year balance. If current year is 0, it's going to exclude it. It's not going to import that account. But it may have a balance in prior year 1 or in prior year 2. So then when you import it, your 2020 balance or your 2019 balance is going to be out of balance because that account was not imported. So make sure you choose all the years that you have imported, and Caseware will read all 3 years. If all 3 years are 0, it will not import that account. Okay, that's one feature you need to look at every time. The other option here, accumulate balances. Now, this is my first trial balance, so that's fine. I don't have to think about accumulating balances. Okay. When you import a trial balance, you can then re-import a new trial balance again. When you re-import the new trial balance, Caseware is going to override. It's going to take last year's balance and put the first import, you imported $5. In the second import, it's actually $7. Caseware is going to take the $7 and put it over the $5. Instead, if you say, no, I don't want you to override with the new $7. I want you to accumulate. I want you to add them up. In your first import, if you import $5, and then in your second import, you import $7, it's going to add them up into $12 if you tick the accumulate balance option. If you don't, then it will override the $5 with a $7 balance. Okay. If we are re-importing, if we are taking a secondary import, a second import again, I also need to clear balances of periods being imported, which means wipe everything and re-import the new balance. I will leave these two for the moment because I haven't got any existing data. There is nothing to accumulate. There is nothing to clear. Later, when I import the final trial balance, I will look at these two options again. Okay, then we go next. Caseware will say there are 55 new accounts in here because we don't have any accounts yet. We haven't imported any accounts yet. So every account that we're importing is new. So these are the 55 new accounts that we will import. I say, okay, that's fine. Next, import. That is how you import your trial balance. Then we click OK when we get that message. We click OK again. And this is now imported into my file. How do I know that? First of all, down here, okay, down here, $221. Sorry, $221,000. Okay, that is my profit for the year. Previously, it was 0. I can go now to my trial balance screen and I can see all the accounts that have been imported into my file. So let me just fix this up. You guys are looking at something different. You guys have this white screen. So hopefully this is a little bit better. So petty cash account 101 has a balance of $200 in 2021. That's the column there. And then if I scroll across, 2020 also $200. 2019 has $100 in the balance. Okay. I'm going to pause here for a couple of questions. Uzal, what will be the import procedure in case of second year audit? It's going to be the same exact procedure. You only import the 2022 balance. That's all. Because next year, all of this data will carry forward to next year. Everything you put into this year's file will carry forward into next year. So next year onwards, you have to import 2021 balance. Do you have to import 2020 balance? No, because you already imported them this year. So second year, third year, fourth year onwards, you only import the balance for that year. Okay, and Caseware can keep the balance for up to 5 years. So in here, if I want to, I can import all the way down to 2017 if I want. Okay. It is possible. Is it possible to share the process? I don't actually have any accounting software to show you. And also because there are so many different accounting packages, showing you one doesn't really mean anything for the others. You need to use the help feature to get the information, or you can reach out to support when you actually try to import from the accounting software. Okay. Another question here, what is the lock checkbox? If I lock a specific account, that means no more changes can be made to that account. We're not going to use this so early because we still need to make changes to this account for now. So I'm not going to use the lock checkbox just yet. Okay, a very, very good question. What happens if the client changes their software? If the client changes their software, you have to delete the entire trial balance and start all over again, including the next thing we do, which is the mapping. So please talk to your clients, make sure they understand the effect it will have on the audit if they decide to change an accounting package or an accounting software. Okay, if they change the TB structure, that will also be the same. You will have to redo everything that we've just done because the account number will be different. Okay, so in this working trial balance screen, you can click on this trial balance button that will open up the working trial balance screen. You will now see it at the bottom here in this tab. In this column, you can quickly resize those columns if you want to, just to give you a bit more real estate to look at the data a bit better. It is quite hard to read sometimes, so you can click on at the very, very left of your screen. If you click on a line, it will highlight that whole line, which allows me to review that line a bit better. You can scroll across to find all the different data. And the most important part, you can also right click on a column at the top here and go show all the different information available, and more importantly, hide. So if I come into the map number heading here, I can hide the map number. Okay. If I click hide map number here, that column will be hidden. If I want to show it again, I can right click in any of these columns, show map number. Okay, so I can also sort in order. So if I want to sort by account number, you can see starts at 101, goes all the way down to 800. I can sort by name in alphabetical order. So starts with T at the top and then heads all the way down to T in alphabetical order. Okay, that's how you can then quickly just review your trial balance. Really important down here. Can you see this $0 cell? Okay, this is totaling all the balances in here. So it's really important that your trial balance is 0. If your trial balance is not 0, you have either imported an incorrect trial balance or you have misunderstood some of the data and imported them incorrectly, or the client has provided you with an unbalanced trial balance. So you need to figure out if it's non-zero, you need to figure out what the problem is and go and fix it. Okay. One other thing I want to point out here, petty cash. You'll notice that under the type, petty cash is an income statement item, which is wrong, but there is a difference here. Okay. Foreign bank is recognized as a balance sheet item. So I just want to point this out, and I'll explain that in about 10 minutes time why that happened. So coming back now into my digital dashboard, I have completed the engagement properties. I have completed the optimizer checklist. I've imported my trial balance, and what we literally just looked at is review the trial balance. Okay, so after that, the next step is to assign map numbers. So to assign my map numbers, I can click on this button here to bring up the assign mapping screen. Now, assigning map numbers is going to be a big exercise. Okay, for those of you who are taking notes, please have your notepads ready because I will be giving you a lot of rules in here. Lots of rules you must follow. If you don't follow the rules, you will break your file. If you break your file, in the best case scenario, we can fix it for you. But in the worst case scenario, you cannot use that file. You have to start all over again. That's a lot of wasted time. So whenever I tell you there is a rule in here, you must follow those rules. Okay. Now, in my trial balance that I just imported, there were 55 accounts. I actually made a bit of a shortcut and I mapped a lot of those accounts. The remaining accounts are what we call unmapped. In your real life practice, all 55 accounts will appear on the left side here, and you will need to remap them to the right side of the screen. These are the map numbers. Okay, so if your client, maybe they're a consolidated group, they have a 500 line trial balance. You have to map all 500 lines. That's why I say this mapping is a really large exercise that we don't want to repeat over and over again. Okay, each year after you finish the mapping, it will then roll forward into the following year, so you don't have to repeat this exercise. Another question, what happens if I have a new accounting package and the ED structure changes? Then you have to remap. This process becomes something you have to repeat. Okay. What if I re-import a new trial balance? If you re-import a new trial balance, but the account numbers stay the same, Caseware will keep that information for you. And I will show you, because later on, we're going to re-import a trial balance. And I will show you what happens when I re-import the same exact trial balance, but with different balances, because it's going to be 12 months. Caseware will keep that information for you. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to reset this view so it looks just like your view, and then we will start the process. So here, this is where we start assigning our map numbers. On the right-hand side is Caseware's own internal chart of accounts. So I'm going to show you how these look. Okay, 1.1.1.10. Now, you don't have to remember any of this. There will be a few rules, but you don't have to remember the numbers, okay? So we're going to start by taking the account on the left-hand side of the screen and putting it into the right-hand side of my screen. So first of all, petty cash. How do I know where do I put petty cash? Well, petty cash is a balance sheet item. Yep. So you look at the first item here. Is this a balance sheet or an income statement item? Well, it's an asset, so it's a balance sheet item. Okay. You open that up, and then you go to the next level, asset or equity and liabilities. So petty cash is an asset. Then you look at the next level. Is this a current or non-current asset? Well, this is a current asset. Then we open this up. Okay. Then you have a list of different options here. Okay. Is this an inventory? Is this a loan? No, 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 no. It is a cash and cash equivalent item. Can you see how there is still a plus? For as long as you can expand, you need to keep expanding till you reach the lowest level. Okay, you don't just put it into current asset because that's not going to work. You need to keep expanding until there is no longer a plus button. Then I can drag petty cash and put it into cash and cash equivalent because there is no longer any further drill down I can go to. So that is rule number 1. If you're writing down in your notes, when mapping your accounts, ensure that you drill down to the lowest level where there is no longer a plus sign for us to keep drilling down to. Okay. Muhammad Kadabur, what happens if client TB already has mapping? You cannot use that mapping because it's not a Caseware mapping. A different software has different mapping. Caseware's mapping is different from all the other softwares out there. This step, it is tedious. It cannot be avoided. Okay. Abir has a question. What if there are balance sheet items not listed here. I will talk a bit about that in a moment. Okay, so we drill it all the way down to the bottom and find cash and cash equivalents. Now, that wasn't very efficient. I actually had to go through a few steps to look for that information. So now I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to make life a little bit easier. Okay, first of all, each of these columns can be sorted by either number or alphabetical order in name. My suggestion is to use the name sorting, because if I wanted to look for cash and cash equivalents, I open up balance sheet, I open up asset, current asset, and then I can see cash and cash equivalent under C. So if I was looking for trade receivables, I know it's going to sit under P in here. It's a bit easier to find that account or that line. Okay, so that is through sorting the name column. Also, it would be great if I could see the balances. So I'm going to right click in here now, anywhere inside the white space, and I can say show balance, which would show me the current year balance for each of these different areas. I can repeat that process by going show PY balance, show prior year balance, and that would show me my prior year balance here. Okay. Cool. So that's that's the couple of tips and tricks available for you. It's optional if you want to use that or not. That's not a rule. That's just something that will make your life a bit easier. The last tip that I have here at this moment is also this column here. Now we are conditioned to read left to right. So if I have the number column sitting here, most of the people that I talk to, they are focusing on the number. What you have the ability to do is also right click, choose name number view. And this will bring the name column to the left-hand side, and then the number column to the right-hand side. And I can then also shrink this so I don't have to look at the number. I can simply just review the account names and the balances. Okay. Sajidul, is there a predefined Excel mapping? No, there isn't, because that is not efficient. This is the most efficient method. We can give you a predefined Excel mapping. It's going to contain 10,000 lines, and it's really hard to find in that Excel document. This is a tried and tested method. This is the most efficient way to map your trial balance. As hard as it looks, this is the best way to do it. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next item here, short-term investments. So my short-term investments, I'm going to go through that whole same process again. Okay, balance sheet. It is an asset. It is a current asset. And I have a number of different options in here: current cash and cash equivalents, inventory, loans, other financial assets. Now, there is the question here now. There is no specific area for short-term investments. There's nothing specifically called short-term investments. So what you're going to do is you are going to find the closest representation. Short-term investment can be other financial asset or maybe other receivables, depending on your understanding of the client's financial statement. Okay, for me, under ABC Motor Company, because I'm the accountant here, I would say the closest is short-term investments is other financial assets. So I'm going to take this and put it under other financial assets. Okay. You can see under non-current asset, there is a few investment sections, investment property. So depending on your understanding of the financial statements of all the client's financial situation, you might say, oh, actually it should go under non-current asset. So it's your understanding and you can decide where it goes. A few questions here. How do we add new accounts? Now, big warning sign here. This is a rule you must follow. You cannot add your own account headers. You must use what has already been provided, and you must find the closest representation. It's not going to be 100% match. You must find the closest and put it into what you think is the closest representation. If you add your own, it will not be included in your audit file. So when you go off and do your audit, that balance will not be included in there. So if I added my own short-term investments in here, when I next go into my audit file and say, show me all my investments, short-term investments is not going to be shown in my file. Okay, please, this is a rule. You must follow that rule. You cannot add an account. If I make a mistake or if I change my mind, short-term investments should not go into other financial assets. I would like to put it under investment property. I can just drag and drop it in here. Okay, notice that I keep drilling down to the lowest level and I put it in the lowest level. If I want to re-look at everything in again, I can drag it over to the left and this would come back over to the left side here. And then I can look for the appropriate account again before I put it in there. Okay, so investment property cost. Okay, let's put that under investment property cost. Can we drag multiple accounts? Yes, you can. Using the shift key on my keyboard, I can choose a number of accounts in a row, or using the control key, I can click on multiple accounts and then you can drag and drop them anywhere you want. Okay. Moving on, other machinery. Other machinery is my property, plant, and equipment. So I can go on the balance sheet, asset, current asset, that's wrong, non-current asset, property, plant, and equipment. I just wanted to also show you another tip here. Now, let's say I have imported a few accounts. My screen is pretty messy now, like this. If I simply come up to the top and collapse balance sheet, can everyone still hear me? Yep, okay. If I simply come down here and collapse balance sheet, testing, can everyone still hear me? Okay. Okay. If I simply collapse balance sheet and then reopen, you can see it is messy. Everything that has been opened inside still remains open. Using the shift key on my keyboard, if I hold down the shift key and then click on this collapse button, then it collapses everything underneath. Okay. I do have a few questions here. What if an account is only applicable for specific industry and not available in Caseware? Taiti, you need to, in those scenarios, I would suggest you send an email. We will be able to find you an area that would best fit the section, okay? You cannot create your own account head. I'm getting a few questions here. Is it possible to create new lines? You are not allowed to create your own lines. You can create your own lines by going new map number, But I can tell you this, when you do the audit, it's going to be wrong, okay, because you haven't set it up properly. If you drag incorrectly, you can drag it back to the left side and it will allow you to drag it back. So you can re-drag from one section to another. Like I just showed you previously in the investment property, if I take short-term investments from non-current assets, I can drag it up to the current asset section. That will just remap the account for us. Okay, so using the shift key here, I can collapse everything and basically gives me a fresh new start. Now, under asset, this is property, plant, and equipment. So non-current asset, there is no other machinery. So the best fit is property, plant, and equipment. So under property, plant, and equipment, I have my cost area and I have my accumulated depreciation. So in here, when I expand this out, you can see building, computer software, IT equipment, land, leasehold. Here, plant and machinery is probably the best fit. Okay, so I can then drag, this is the cost account. So I can drag and put this under plant and machinery under cost. Now, when we're in here, you may find certain areas that don't fit what you need. For example, if you have a different type of property that isn't listed in here, and you say, oh, actually, we don't use buildings. We will never use buildings for this client. Okay, if that was the case, you can right-click and choose property and change the name. Okay, but you need to make sure that it is the same type of category. You don't say, oh, actually, I can't find cash. I'm just going to change buildings to cash. If you rename this to cash, in your audit file, cash is going to appear under property, plant, and equipment. And then you're going to say, well, this is wrong. It's wrong because you renamed it incorrectly. You can rename other types of property, plant, and equipment under the same category. Okay, if you say, I cannot find the exact category in here, you can rename it. You cannot add your own. And yes, Sajidul, if your client maintains 1,000 lines, you have to map every single account separately. You can map multiple accounts in a row, but yes, all of those accounts need to be mapped. Okay, in here, you also see two accounts, property, plant, and equipment UD1 and UD2. UD stands for user defined. So instead of renaming buildings, I can also choose to rename this line here. So maybe we want to call it cars. That can then be renamed to car if you want. Okay, next account, accumulated depreciation. I come into the accumulated depreciation group. Okay, this one here is cost. This is accumulated depreciation. Other machinery and equipment. That goes under plant and machinery. Okay, you'll notice that there is no longer a plus for me to click, so I can drag and put it under plant and machinery. Okay, moving on to the next account, payroll clearing. So that's just other payables. In here, I can simply look around. Other financial asset, payables is under my equity and liability. So I open up equity and liability. I'll say this is my current liability. If it's the non-current liability, you can look for it under non-current liability. Okay, so under current liability, I have other payables or I have trade payables. So depending on your client, you decide where is the best place to put it. Here, I'm just going to say trade payables under account payables. So I expand all the way to the bottom, payroll clearing shows up in there. Okay. Oh, very good question here, Tassin. If you change the name of the asset, no, the accumulated depreciation will not change. So you have to change it in both sections. So you'll see, I called this cars, UD1, I changed it to cars. You'll see that This here still says UD1. So very, very good. Thanks for reminding me. Here, I need to go to properties and change that to cars as well, so that the accumulated depreciation and the cost both update to cars. Okay, it will not change automatically. Okay. Next account, common stock. That's my equity item. So I can now come into the equity section here. I have share capital. Put that under share capital. Okay. Retained earnings. That is my distributable reserve. That goes under distributable reserve. I also have my net income or loss. Remember, at the very beginning, I told you net income was 221,000. So Caseware has a net income account that also needs to go under distributable or non-distributable reserve, depending on your financials or your client's treatment. Okay, so I'm going to put net income under non-distributable reserves. Okay, so that is all my balance sheet item. Now I have some income and expenses items. So I'm going to collapse all my balance sheet, and I'm just going to focus on income statement for now. So under income statement, I have expenses by function and expenses by nature. So depending on the presentation in your financial statements, you can decide whether your expenses will be shown by function or by nature. Okay, so you can expand, and you'll see in my file, all my expenses have been set to by function. Now, here is the rule. Once again, if you're taking notes, write this down. You must only choose expenses by function or by nature, either one. You cannot map to both. If you map to both, your expenses will be incomplete, because Caseware will only show one or the other. So in this file, because I have mapped a number of accounts to expenses by function, I will need to map the rest of those expenses to the function. So professional fees, that's not a cost of sales, that's normal expenses. And then under administrative expenses, you can see we have a big list of items in here. So what I can do, I can use the search name feature at the top here, and I can search professional. Okay. As I search for professional, under expenses by function, administrative expenses, there is an item called consulting and professional fees. That's probably the best place I can put it. So I'm going to just drag and put it under consulting and professional fees. So that account appears in here. When I'm done, I click the X button. Now under my income statement, professional fees shows up in there. Okay, same thing. Where is my rent? So let's go in here again. Under the search function, I type RENT. So here, I'm going to look at everything. Is this a balance sheet item? No. Is this an income statement item? Yes. Expenses by function. Is this the cost of sales? No. Normal expense. Under administrative expense, I have lease rentals on operating leases. That's probably the best place I can put it. So rent goes in there. Okay, you can use the search function to look for what you think is the closest name or for the account, and then we will quickly highlight them for you. You can see that there are rental income as well. That's not an income. This is an expense, so it shouldn't go into income. Okay, other earnings. That's an income statement item. Under income here, I can go to other income, and I can put that under other income. Okay. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but the whole time I've been mapping my accounts, none of that information updates in my file. inside of working papers, Caseware, like I told you, everything saves automatically. Under the assign mapping screen here, it does not automatically save. You need to save this yourself. Look at the bottom corner here. There is an OK button and an apply button. On the right-hand side is a cancel button. If I click cancel now, everything that I've just done in the mapping will be lost. That's why we kept it very, very far apart from OK and apply, because we don't want you to accidentally click on the wrong button. Here, if I click on the apply button, which is to save the work, it will ask you, do you want to recalculate? Inside of Caseware, anytime you are asked, do you want to recalculate? Say yes. When you recalculate, you will now see the balances update with the mapping that you've put in. Apply is save. OK is save and exit. So when you're ready, you can click OK and it will save and exit your file for you. Okay. I have a question here. What is the flip account? That's a bit more of an advanced item. A flip account is, I'll just explain very quickly, but I won't show it in this training session. We might consider this for something, 6 months or 12 months in the future when we do an advanced training session, okay? A flip account is where your balance can flip between debit and credit, and Caseware will automatically flip it for you. So for example, my cash and cash equivalents. Now, if I go into my cash and cash equivalent, my bank account, at the moment, this is debit. It means I have $100,000 in there. What happens if it's negative $20,000? Then it becomes an overdraft. So if it's an overdraft, it's no longer an asset. It should be a liability. Yep, there is a bank overdraft here. Now, if this turns to negative $20,000, you have to come in and manually drag and drop it into bank overdraft. Using the flip option, Caseware can automatically do that for you by reading the balance. So it says if it's positive or debit 100,000, keep it in cash and cash equivalents. If it's negative 20,000, automatically take it and put it under bank overdraft for the user. So it's an automated system. I don't want to go through that because it just adds extra complexity, extra layers of advancement. So we will go through that maybe much further in the future when you guys are more comfortable with Caseware. Okay, cool. Now we have fully mapped our account. Okay, once I fully map an account, first thing I want to do is look at the bottom here. Remember, originally it was $221,000 in profit. After I fully mapped my account, it now shows $251,000. Yep, because now it knows what all those accounts better represent. So if I come back into my trial balance screen like we did before, remember petty cash originally started as an income statement item. By mapping the account, by telling Caseware this is a cash and cash equivalent account, Caseware automatically knows now it is a balance sheet item. It has also assigned it to a lead sheet number called 140. Okay, and by looking at the type, Caseware will total up all accounts marked as an income statement item. It has totaled up all the balances in here and given me the profit or loss for the year. Okay. Quick question here. Can we export this map TB? Yes, you can. By selecting the entire account. So on the very, very left side here, I click, which highlights the whole line, and then I drag that highlights everything. Okay, so I start from the top, drag to the bottom. I go Control C, which is copy, or I can right click copy. I can open up an Excel file. Hey, Control V. and that would paste all the information in there, okay, including the map number that we have just given it. Okay, so this now is my fully mapped trial balance. Okay, I've just explained to you how we received the 251,000. Now, this net income and loss, just wanting to show you as well, as soon as we have calculated a new net income or loss, remember the net income or loss account we mapped under equity, that will also update for you with the new income or loss amount. Okay, if you move items around and there is a new profit or loss for the year, this balance will update itself. If you post an adjustment later and it affects the profit or loss, this will also update for you. Okay, so I would like to pause here, but let's cover off. It's 3:30. We're just going to go about 20 minutes over time. There is a few more things I would like to cover off, and then we'll open up for questions. Please feel free to hang around if you can. If not, you can watch the recording, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of this. We will organize a few more Q&A sessions after this whole training is done next week. We'll keep coming back and having these Q&A sessions to answer your questions if you have any questions. But if possible, please hang around for a few more minutes and watch the rest of this training session. So now, coming back into my digital dashboard, I have completed assigning map number. So I move on to the next section, which is to begin my engagement work. So in here, I now move over to the next workflow, and this is where I know we can now start to perform the audit. Okay, so we can start with client acceptance and continuance. I can click in here, and Caseware says, for client acceptance and continuance, you have these 4 documents you need to complete. You have your acceptance and continuance procedures, you have your opening balance testing, you have your terms of engagement. Okay, I can also come into my document screen. Under planning, that's where those 4 documents are. Okay, 405, let's start with that document there. So you can see there was a warning. Oops, we lost that warning. Basically, in here, anything that has a green cell, I need to answer with a question. Okay, so all of these green cells you need to fill in with, sorry, I need to answer the question. Okay, all the green cells require an answer. Once you have filled all of this up, or once you have put in a response, a little tick box in here will show up. Tick and your name or your initials will show up there, and the date that you signed off. Okay. Let me just save some of your questions, and then I'll come back to it later. Okay. Bear with me for a moment. So you answer all of these questions as you go down the list, and that's how you would do the audit. Now, there are lots of other features in here I will look at on day 2 and day 3. So I'm going to save this now. And basically, the principle that we're going to follow here is we start from the top and we work our way down this list. Okay, every one of these documents need to be responded to. There is a question here, engagement letter. What is the signed version and what is the normal version? So let's open this up. The normal version 415 is the actual engagement letter that we have set up for you. you can choose to use our engagement letter. And later on, I will show you how to export this out to Word and Excel, or sorry, Word or PDF. You can then send that Word or PDF document to your client, and they can then sign it. So when they sign it back to you in a PDF, what do? You drag it and put it back into your Caseware file. So this here, if I double click on that, that's the question. What is this? What is this 415 signed? This is a reminder. There is no document in here yet. So when I'm ready, where is my, when I'm ready, I can take the PDF of the engagement letter that's signed, drag it over 415-1, and when I release my finger from the mouse, it's going to say replace or insert. I'm going to say replace. And now it changes into a PDF. When I click on this, it would then open the PDF of the letter, okay, with the signed signature there. So that is the difference between the signed and unsigned version. The unsigned version is for you to prepare the document, and then the signed version is for you to import the signed copy from your client. If you look at Caseware's term of engagement and say, no, that's too much, or that's not what we want, our firm has our own engagement letter, that's perfectly fine. I can delete this document. I remove 415. I have my own draft letter, which is a Word document. Drag and drop that in there. And you will now have a Word document of the draft letter. And then you can send this off and receive the PDF from your client. Okay. There is no limit to document size. You can add them as large as you want. Okay. There is a few questions about changing financial data. I will come back to that as a Q&A at the Q&A part. So going through this list, we complete all of this. I'm going to skip all of that because it's the same. You open them up. It has procedures. It has instructions. Follow the instructions, fill them up, and make sure you sign it off. And we will talk a little bit more about that day 2, day 3. I'm now going to jump straight into materiality first. So we complete all of these documents, and then we come to 420, materiality. So I'm going to quickly talk about materiality and the FSA, and then we'll have our Q&A, and then we'll finish for the day. So the materiality document is really, really important because it will now drive the audit. Okay. First of all, when you open up the materiality document, under options, now this is not just the materiality document, this is every document. I have it turned off because I would like to have more space, but under options, you can display document guidance, and Caseware will give you the instructions. And here are some tips, but most importantly, the relevant ISA related to this document includes ISA 300, 320, and 450. So if you're looking at this and saying, why do I have to complete this document? The document guidance will tell you the ISA that you are meeting when completing this document. Okay, so we start from the top. Identify the principal users. So you can go ahead and say shareholders, what would influence their decisions. Okay, managers, head of departments, whatever you want to put in here. We have given you 5 lines. If you need more than 5 lines, insert additional lines by right-click, insert new item. If you don't want any more lines, you can then right-click and delete item to delete one of the lines from the table. Okay. Then we come into the actual calculation part. So I'm going to shrink out of this so we can see this here. So overall materiality, we need to define the overall materiality. Big warning here. Use professional judgment. The software will give you guidance, will give you recommendations, but your professional judgment overrides all of that. Coming back to a car. This is a car. You are the user. We may suggest you do certain things a certain way, but ultimately you are the decision maker. Okay, if you get picked up by a regulator and the regulator says, why did you do this? And you say, oh, because Caseware told me to, that is not a valid excuse. Okay, Caseware can suggest, but Caseware is not telling you to. And I will show you a lot of options here to override the decision making the software has done for you. So first of all, we need to decide, is this engagement profit oriented or not for profit? Because based on the ISA handbook, if it's profit oriented, you need to base your materiality on these factors. If it's not for profit, then you can look at total revenue or total expenses. Okay, so most of the time it's probably going to be profit oriented. So in here, we need to look at income before taxes, gross revenue, and assets. Those are what we suggest you look at. Those are the accounts we suggest that you look at when determining your materiality. Okay, we have also split this into two categories: your planning, your preliminary category, and your final category. So at the moment, we're only dealing with the preliminary planning trial balance. So I'm only going to look at the top part of this table here. The balance for income before tax is 325,000. Where did we get that amount? All the accounts, all the balances that you imported and mapped. So if you map something incorrectly, if you map an expense, or if you map a property, plant, equipment item under income, suddenly you have the wrong income balance. Because you have the wrong income, you're going to have a wrong materiality, and then it's all going to fall apart. Okay, so this is based on your map account. If you look at this and say, no, Caseware's wrong, I want to look at something else, you can use this column here. See how it says other describe? I can enter this and say total profit. Okay, and then you can manually type in the amount that you want. You can also right click in here and insert new items, and that will add additional lines for you. Okay, so these balances are calculated for you. 2.6 million is my gross revenue. It's also green, which means I can type over that and say 2.7 million. Caseware says, are you sure you want to override? Yes, I'm sure. I click yes. That accepts the 2.7 million. What happens in here? You see a little red dot. So now a reviewer, a regulator, an external reviewer, when they open up this file, they see that red dot there and say, what does the red dot mean? The red dot means the user has chosen to override the amount. The overridden amount was 2.6 million as per our calculation. The user has chosen to change it to 2.7 million. If you don't agree with that, you can remove the override and put it back to normal. Under total profit, if I say the total profit was 285,000, notice that there is no red dot because there was no calculation, there was no overridden section. Okay, this was just blank. You just filled it in whatever you wanted. If you choose to override Caseware's decision, there will be a warning. Okay, so then we have our prior period balances as well, just for historical purposes. You can then put a benchmark. How many percent of income before tax is our materiality? So we recommend here 5%. So once again, that's a recommendation. I'm going to follow Caseware's recommendation. And 5% of 325,000 is $16,000 here. That is the possible materiality you may want to use. You can use the comment section to justify your decision. This is important because if a regulator look at this and say, why did you choose 5%? Oh, I don't know, excuses, reasons, blah, blah, blah. By putting this in there, they don't have to come and ask you for it. Okay, so that is the completeness of the work. Justify why you arrived at 5%. Here, I'm going to say 2%, giving me, actually, sorry, I'm going to go with 0.5%, giving me $13,000. Okay, Asset, we don't have a recommendation. So based on your own personal experience, I'm going to say maybe 2.5%. So once again, Caseware is calculating all these amounts for you. 0.5% of 2.6 million is 13,000. What happens if I choose to override it to 14,000? You get that red warning message there. Okay, so fill in all of that information to the best of your abilities. Everything that I have shown you so far can be edited later on. You can come back in and change it later. Okay, so once we have filled in all of this, I can now come in and determine my preliminary balance. Now, because this is a first year file, we haven't got the prior period materiality. Okay, if you roll this forward, the amount that you put in the final will roll forward into prior period when I put this into 2022. So for preliminary, I'm going to go with $13,000 here actually. Sorry, I'm going to go with 15,000. Okay, so $15,000 is my preliminary planning materiality. Why did you decide that? Based on firm policy, we have done XYZ, considered XYZ. So this is your explanation on why you arrived at $15,000. And once again, if you don't fill this in, the regulator, the reviewer might pick you up and say, hey, why is this $15,000? So you got to explain yourself. Okay. So I have a couple questions. All sensitive information. Yes, all your data will be saved inside of this Caseware file. Will the amount of current period and prior period? Yes, you'll see that the current and prior period are all different based on the account, the trial balance that you mapped and imported. So if you re-import a new trial balance, if you post adjustments, this number will update. So if suddenly you import, the client calls you up and says, sorry, I gave you the wrong trial balance. Here is the correct one. And the gross revenue is now 1 million. Then automatically your possible materiality will drop down to $5,000. So when you re-import a new trial balance, and I will show you that tomorrow, when you re-import a new trial balance or you post really, really big adjustments, one of the first things you need to do is come back and reconsider your materiality. Okay, so I have my preliminary materiality here. You need to consider any possible misstatements. So think about any misstatement that may happen based on historical facts, based on actual reviews, whatever you have. All the information that you have, you would insert into these lines to describe it. Okay. Then we come down to performance materiality. Now, based on your understanding of this engagement, what is the risk level? If it's high risk, as per the ISA standards, if it's high risk, it should be 65% of your overall materiality. If it's low risk, then it is 75% of your overall materiality. Okay, so I then choose 75% here. Very good question here. Should I choose the preliminary materiality from 3 figures or use any amount between the highest and lowest? Maru has a question there. So how did I come to $15,000? I came through that through my own judgment. I looked at all the possible materiality, and based on your firm's decision, whether we average them out, whether we pick one over the other, whether we pick a percentage of something, you decide that. That's your firm. Every firm has a different decision. I can tell you use gross revenue, but not every engagement has to rely on gross revenue. If it's a brand new construction company and they're in the investment phase, gross revenue is $0. We can't use $0 as a materiality. It is your own judgment. Based on your knowledge of this client and of this engagement, I came to the decision of $15,000. Okay. So by choosing low risk, Caseware calculates 75% of the 15,000, giving us $11,250. Now, once again, I can overwrite this amount. If I want to change this to 14,000, I can change that. When you put this in, you see this is updated. A reviewer is going to see that and say, why did you change to 14,000? Based on firm's decision, you justify it. Okay. Now, is this a good step? Personally, I would say no, because this is based on the ISA standards. So the ISA standard says if it's low risk, you've got to go with 75% performance materiality. So by going away from ISA standards, you are now deciding to do this on your own. If a regulator picks this up, you better have a very, very strong reason to justify why you chose not to follow the ISA standards. Okay? So I'm not going to play with fire. I'm going to go back with the recommended standards. Okay, moving down to the next section here. Adjusted performance materiality level. So here, I can also choose specific materiality for specific areas. For example, this client has had problems with inventory in the past. And based on my judgment, I don't think 11,000 is sufficient for inventory. I'm going to say for inventory, I want a separate materiality amount. With that, I tick the inventory section. So now all my inventory accounts is going to be based on a different materiality that I have decided. And based on my workings and understanding, I'm going to say inventory should be $9,000 materiality. Okay, and then I can say client has had issues recording inventory, and then blah, 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 blah. You can put whatever you want in here. Once again, to justify that how you came to $9,000. In practice, the adjusted performance materiality should be lower than your file's performance materiality. Okay, but the software will allow you to go with a higher amount. That should never be the case, but if I put in $13,000 here, it will let you do that. Okay, and then there will be a warning further down that says, hey, your inventory materiality seems to be higher than your file's materiality. It's not usually done that way. We allow you to, but we will warn you that it's not a good idea. Okay, so I'll change this back to $9,000 and fill that in. Okay, so I've done all my planning materiality. You have materiality for specific circumstances. You can fill all this in. By the way, these are all manual, so this is all green. I can insert additional lines through the right-click menu. Okay, right-click menu allows me to insert additional lines. Performance materiality for specific circumstances. If you have any circumstances here you need to think about. Trivial misstatement, anywhere between 1 to 5%. So if I chose 1%, then it would be $150, which is 1% of my overall materiality. And then I can enter a comment on why I decided on 1%. So everywhere you see comments, think about what you need to put in there so that a reviewer or regulator isn't going to call you up and say, what do you mean by this? We want to avoid those calls. So make sure you have all the information available to them that you don't get those calls. Okay, section G, final materiality assessment. I'm not going to do this yet because we are still in our preliminary materiality. So I'm going to ignore section G, and I'm going to come in here and complete my preliminary materiality. Okay, so here I can click the home button to save, or I can click the close button. I can click the close button and save the file. Okay. So give us 10 more minutes and I'll talk one last thing and then we can finish off with some Q&A. So moving on now to the next document in the list, risk assessment, the FSA document. This is the most important document in your entire audit file. This is what I call the brains of the entire audit, the financial statement areas worksheet. Okay, so we have a warning here. FSA generated no planning balance. That's fine. Let's expand it. So there are 4 tabs at the top here, lots of information, lots of data. We are currently in the planning stage, so I'm going to use just the planning tab. So in the planning tab, first thing I'm going to do is refresh. Before I click refresh, you'll see there are no planning balances here. As soon as I click the refresh balance, it's going to take all of the balance that is in my file. Remember how I mapped everything. So the total of all my property, plant, and equipment balance is $31,000. The total of all my receivables is $130,000. Based on all these balances, Caseware is now going through and say these areas are material. Okay, $11,250. Anything that's over $11,250 is now material in here. Deferred tax liability, $875, $8,715. Immaterial, does not get marked. Let me zoom in for you. Okay, there is no tick in here. This is all automated, by the way. So your professional judgment, you go through this. Is this correct? Yeah, this is all correct. Maybe deferred tax liability, you might say, oh, actually they have had problems. I know it's $8,000. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to say it's material anyways. You can tick that. If you choose to tick that, then it will have the red dot to say it was overridden. Okay, that is something you can do. You can also go the other way and say, receivables, nah, it's not material. I'm going to untick that. Then you will remove it. Okay, once again, the red dot. If I was the regulator, I see this, you're going to be in trouble. So I'm going to remove the override. I'm going to go with the default setting that Caseware has given you. But you have the ability to override something here. So someone says, how do I explain the override in here? When you go into the risk assessment section or the risk response section, there is a field at the end here that says audit response finalization. You can add your explanation in that box. Okay, so not in this section here. You can go to a different tab under the risk assessment. No, sorry, under the risk response tab. You can add all your explanation relating to that area in this green box. Okay, very good question there. So once we have decided on the materiality assessment in here, I can now close this document. And the last thing that we're going to look at today is coming back to the AOCR, the Optimizer Confirmation Report. Before I go in there, I just wanted to show you under my asset section, I have investment property, intangibles, asset investments, inventory. All of this needs to be completed or deleted. Okay, so I'm going to come into the AOCR here after I look at my FSA. And what Caseware is going to do it's going to look at all your materiality decisions. Everything that you said was material or immaterial, and it will now provide you with, this was the first part that we looked at this morning. We deleted all the comments, so we deleted all the documents. In the second part, Caseware is going to say, you can now delete investment property. You can now delete intangibles asset because they have no balances. You can now delete prepayments because it has a $285 balance, which is below materiality. You can now delete deferred tax liability because it's below materiality. Okay, just like before, you can choose to tick or untick those documents. If it's ticked, it will be deleted. If it's unticked, it will be saved into your file. One thing you can consider, if you're writing down notes, one thing you can consider is keeping all the lead sheets. Even if they don't have a balance, you can keep the lead sheets in your file because there's no work in there. You just have a lead sheet. In the future, if there was a new trial balance or if an adjustment was made and suddenly you have borrowing that is material, it would show up in the lead sheet and you might then go, oh, actually, I need to look at borrowings because during my planning, I said borrowings was immaterial and we deleted everything. So if that was the case, I might say keep the non-current borrowings lead sheet, keep the prepayments lead sheet document. Okay, and then when we're ready, I come down to the bottom and I go proceed with deletion. So proceed with deletion, it says once it's deleted, there is no undo, but I can still manually add from the document manager, and we'll look at that tomorrow. So I'm going to click OK here, and that is now deleted from the file like before with my initials and my name. And when I come back into the asset section, you will find all of those areas have been deleted from the file because you have decided, or we have decided, that it was immaterial. Okay, so we're customizing the file, and that's just the first part of customization. Over the next 2-3 sessions, we will look at more and more customization so that at the very end of the file, all the work that is required is all showing. Anything that's not required is fully removed from the file. You don't have to work on it. You don't have to think about it. You don't even have to see it. So that brings us to the end of what I wanted to cover today. If I do apologize for going over time. If you need to, feel free to exit the session. Now I have a few questions I would like to take over and answer in here. So going through the list, my list of questions. That's already answered. So anything to do with sharing files, more than one user on the file, we will deal with in day 4 on how people can work on the file. There's a question here. What is the basic difference between mapping and chart of accounts? They are actually the same. Chart of accounts is Caseware's own chart of accounts, and mapping means you are taking those accounts and mapping it to Caseware's chart of accounts. So mapping is the chart of accounts. They are the same thing. Okay. There's a question here, more than one license would be required. In that case, how to integrate workings done by each user. If you only have one license, then you all have to work on that same computer. And on day 3, I will show you how you can change the name of the user, but that's only if you use one license. Kazi, if you have more than one license, if you say you got 7 licenses, on day 4, I'm going to show you how we can take this, put it on the cloud, and share it with everybody. Okay. Are there any changes in the trial? Okay. If there are any changes in the trial balance, you can simply re-import the trial balance. So if the client calls you up and say, "Oh, I've posted a number of adjustments. I've got so many adjustments," you can manually post them yourself. And day 3, we'll talk about posting adjusting journals. You can either manually post them yourself or you can re-import a new trial balance. Either one will change the balances in your file. Okay, and when you change the balances, your materiality will change, your area balances will change, your financial statement areas will all change. We will, first thing tomorrow, we're going to talk about re-importing a new trial balance. Okay. So Kazi, if you re-import a new trial balance or if you change the balance amount, only the amounts will change. The mapping will stay the same, assuming that the account number is the same. So if I re-import the same exact trial balance, but with different balances, then only the balances will change. You do not have to remap the account. Sajidul, display digital dashboard. So can you see where my cursor is here? Bottom left corner, there is a digital dashboard tab. This is how you get back to the digital dashboard. If yours, Dipto, if yours says unable to load, please, I'll send you an email and I will come and have a remote session with you personally to review the issue. Okay. Reservoir, can we integrate cloud backup? Now, can I please, I need to confirm if you have Caseware Cloud subscription. If you do have a Caseware Cloud subscription, it is already automatically included in your subscription. But if you don't have Caseware Cloud and you want to implement your own cloud backup, we will need to talk about that separately together, because it depends on what you mean by cloud backup. If you're talking about Dropbox and all that, it does not work. By the way, those of you who think of using Dropbox, Caseware cannot work with Dropbox, so please be aware of that. If you're simply just copying your entire server onto the cloud each day, that's up to you, that's fine, but Dropbox will not work with Caseware. If we're doing recurring audit by, yes, if you are, okay, so this ABC Motor Company file, this is the first year I'm using Caseware. You'll notice that I imported all the prior year balance because we need that for our audit. But if you roll this forward, next year, all this data will be saved in your file. You don't have to re-import anymore. But if this is the first year you're using a recurring audit, you will need to import all the prior year data. And it does, because when you look at your lead sheet later on, we do have prior year balances in here as well. So please include your prior year data. Okay. Next session, we will be seeing each other same time on Saturday. Okay. We will organize to have the recording sent out to everybody. We will have next session on Saturday, and then I believe the following session will be on
21 June.
Monday. So that's Monday. And then the final session is on Wednesday. That's for those who have Caseware Cloud and SmartSync. Everyone is welcome to join and attend and watch it, but it's only applicable to those who have Caseware Cloud and SmartSync subscription. Reservoir, there is no app. It's a Windows software. It's a Windows app. That's the only thing that we have. Okay, so it's not a specific app that you can run. You need a Windows operating system to run Caseware. Mustafa Zook, how long will Caseware retain the data? It retains it forever until the user chooses to delete the data. Caseware will not delete your data for you. It's just like any Word or Excel document on your computer. It just stays there. Okay. Paskin, no, this does not work on iOS. This does not work on any other computer. You must have a Windows 8.1 or Windows 10 operating system Windows machine. And Sajidul, if you chose one form, it is possible, but there is a lot of manual work that we can cover off in an advanced session. That's not something that we have time for in our sessions. I can think about, I'll try and create some sort of videos to show you guys those resources in the future. Okay, so when first selecting the profile, it's important that you choose the correct profile. How safe is my data with Caseware? That's That's really up to you because the data is stored on your computer. On day 3, I will show you how you can enable password protection on your Caseware files. We can include password protection on the file itself, but if you leave your computer at a restaurant and someone picks it up, they will have access to that data if they can find your password. So it's really, it's like any other Word or Excel document on your computer. How safe is that? It's the same way. Like the file is stored on your local machine. Will you cover journal testing? Yes, we will cover journal testing. What if we transfer? Yes, you can transfer Caseware data from C drive to other drives. That's just copying that whole data folder to a different drive. Okay. So I think I have answered most of the questions. There are about 8 questions in here that we haven't covered yet. Things like tags and business cycles. We will cover that when we reach those areas. Omar, there is no, this software is called Caseware, and the template is Audit International Cloud. Yes, Ted, we will also show you our sampling tool. For those of you who are interested in subscribing to cloud, on day 3 and day 4, I will have a colleague in here, and I will provide you with his contact details. You can reach out to him, and he will set you up with the sales order that you can then subscribe to Caseware Cloud. Yes, we will share the recorded video. That will come into your email sometime later today or early tomorrow morning, okay?
স্যার আপনাদের কারো প্রশ্ন না থাকলে যদি কারো প্রশ্ন থাকে প্লিজ একটু রেইজ করেন নাহলে একটু শেয়ার করেন প্লিজ
Amino, do you mean by a different currency, or are you talking about the currency signed in your file? Because the currency sign that's used inside of Caseware is based on your computer setting. So if your computer setting, like mine, is set to Australia, I think, it automatically shows Australian dollar. If you set it to Singapore, it automatically shows Canadian dollars. So you can change it. It's not inside of Caseware. It's based on your Windows region. Okay. Thank you, Uzal. Hopefully you guys enjoy and got a lot out of this. Look, this is only the first session. We will have a lot more stuff to cover before I get everyone set up with the basic knowledge. And then hopefully I will work with Afseen and the ICAB over the next 6 to 12 months to get you more advanced knowledges through tip vids and videos that you can watch and enhance your skills in using Caseware working papers. Okay, so yeah, thanks everyone for your time today. I will stay online for a few more minutes if you have any more questions. And I will reach out to Dipto to look at your the question, the issue that you're having. So yes, thank you everyone for your time, and we'll talk again soon on Saturday.
Thank you, Ken, for your session. It was a nice training, I hope.
Thanks, Fatin.
And if anyone has any questions, want to ask, they can directly mail to you and
Yeah.
also me, so that we can answer those questions on the next session.
Yep.
And we will provide the recording of today's training session within very shortly. So
Actually, Fatin, it's going to take. Let me just pause the recording here because
okay.